top nuclear envoys of South Korea, the U.S. and Japan met on Monday for the first time since the failed impeachment vote against President Yoon. Despite the upheaval, the three sides say the trilateral cooperation against North Korean provocations remains solid. We are joined by VOA correspondent Jessica Stone this morning. Hello there, Jessica.
Good morning.
So let's start with how Washington is viewing the impeachment attempt and the efforts to maintain stability here on the Korean Peninsula in the light of the political turmoil.
Well, the promises that you outlined there that were made during the meetings between the nuclear envoys kind of ring hollow here in Washington because there was no advanced warning of the declaration of martial law, either to the U.S. military, much less to the U.S. political leaders and counterparts here in Washington. And so there is a feeling here that there is a disconnect. And we have seen a few of the major meetings that were supposed to take place between the Americans and the Koreans canceled, including the consultative group, the nuclear consultative group meetings here in Washington. Those have been canceled. And we also should point out that U.S. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin, who is in the region, is going to Tokyo, but has canceled his plans to go to Seoul.
Well, then the question is, what does this gap in communication between Seoul and Washington mean for efforts to counter China in the region?
Well, VOA has been speaking to a number of analysts here in Washington who look at the U.S.-Korea relationship very closely. And one of them from the Heritage Foundation, Bruce Klinger, told us this. He said the incoming U.S. administration will be focused on countering the multi-faced Chinese threat to the region. Yoon's actions, he says, will trigger doubts as to the viability of Seoul's roles and contributions. And one point we heard time after time from analysts was that coupled with the leadership changes in Japan, the feeling here in Washington by these analysts is that the two major allies that are part of the triad are less dependable, potentially, for the U.S. going forward when it comes to countering China. Several of those analysts also telling us that that Beijing wants a Democratic Party president to replace Yoon because they are, quote, more open to engaging China. And that when the incoming Trump administration comes, they do want to focus on countering China, taking a tougher stance. But of course, if Trump wants to engage directly with Kim Jong-un, as he has in the past, it will be easier, they believe, with the Democratic Party president in Seoul.
I see. Jessica, let's move on to what's happening over in the U.S. Trump's choice for defense secretary, that is former Fox News host Pete Hegseth, he's facing an uphill battle for Senate confirmation. What can you tell us about that?
Well, it seems to have turned in the last few days to a slightly more even path to confirmation, but it's still a path that is difficult to achieve. And one of the things that we've seen this week with Pete Hegseth is he's back on Capitol Hill. He's meeting with the senators who have to approve his confirmation. One of those senators in particular that he's courting is Senator Joni Ernst of Iowa. She is a decorated military veteran herself, also a survivor of sexual assault and someone who is committed to ending sexual assault in the U.S. military. That's important because, of course, Hegseth is facing numerous claims that he engaged in sexual misconduct with women and that he has a drinking problem. And so after her meeting with him today, she told reporters, quote, I will be supporting Hegseth through the confirmation process and that he has committed to support her work to prevent sexual assaults in the rank. Donald Trump himself, meantime, has also expressed his support for Hegseth on Truth Social last Friday, saying that he was still backing him as a candidate, but he still has to get a hearing and he still has to get confirmed.
Right, and this all comes at a time of uncertainty, more, broadly about the impact of a change of leadership in Washington at the top, the incoming Trump administration. Now, I know you guys, VOA has been digging into the profile of Trump's nominee for a UN ambassador. Now, what can you tell us about Elise Stefanik?
Yeah, so she is potentially an unlikely candidate for this position. She has very little foreign policy experience, and she's been 10 years in the U.S. House of Representatives. She's 40 years old. She began her career in northern New York as a moderate Republican at the age of 30. And she has really, though, in the last 6 months, emerged as a very strong and vocal supporter of Israel. She was present in the hearings you see there in the hearings that the House held again with college presidents, talking to them about the anti-Semitic protests on their college campuses. And she really gained a lot of U.S. national attention during that period of time. She called for the resignation of some of those college presidents, and some of them ultimately did go on to resign. But she has also been a very strong supporter of Donald Trump. She made that move within the last 4 to 6 years. She went from being a moderate Republican to someone who supports the claims that he's made about winning the 2020 election. And she also came out in very clear favor of him during the impeachment trials, defending him extensively. But again, the major definer of her in the last couple of months, really on a foreign policy stage, is this stance on anti-Semitism. She's become someone who has spoken in May and at the Israeli Knesset and has vowed to back Israel. That's really helped her in this position, as well as in her own campaign. She's been a recipient of a lot of pro-Israel donors.
Alrighty, Jessica, thanks so much for the report today. We appreciate it as always.
You bet. Good to see you.